So 2.6 is just like 2.5 in the fact that we're still going through those same steps. So as you look at the steps, you'll notice they look exactly the same as we did in 2.5a and 2.5b. I did add the little step here of making sure that it's in standard form because you did see that in 2.5 where it wasn't in standard form and you had to change it. So I just wanted to mention I did add that step, but just more in clarification than anything else. We still factor out the greatest common factor as our first step if we can. We multiply A times C, so that's our first value. Remember, that's our first times our last, just like before. And then we find the pair that adds or subtracts to give us the B value in the middle, just like before. And then we do our box, just like before, and we take out our greatest common factor out of each row and column. And then if we took out a greatest common factor at the very beginning in this step, then we write it out in front when we write our factors. So we'll get going on some examples. So as you look at example 1, again, your first step is to make sure it's in standard form, which you notice that it goes square term, regular term, constant term. So we know it's in standard form, and then we look to see if there's a greatest common factor. So is there a number that goes into 2, 9, and 4? And because there isn't, then we get to move on to step 3, which is multiply A times C. So you're going to go 2 times 4, which is 8. Factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. And we're looking for the pair that adds or subtracts to give us 9. And so 1 and 8 adds to give us 9. And so we're going to draw our box. So we draw our box. Just like before, the first term goes in the first box. The last term goes in our last box. And the pair that we pick goes in the other two boxes. So we have 1x in one and 8x in the other. And then we take out our greatest common factor. So as we look at the first row, our smallest number is 1. And so we write it down, and our next smallest number is x, or sorry, a letter they have in common is x, that's not a number. And the smallest power is 1, and so we just take 1 out. As we look at 8x to the 4, or 8x and 4, our smallest number is 4. Does 4 go into 8 evenly? It does, so we write it down. Going the other way, you look at 2x squared and 8x. 2 is your smaller number. Does it divide into 8 evenly? It does, so we write it down. And do they have a letter in common? They both have an x, and the smallest power is 1, so we just take 1 out. And as we look at 1x to the 4th, our smaller number is 1. Does it go into 4 evenly? It does. Do they both have a letter in common? They don't, so you're done. So my factors are x plus 4 and 2x plus 4. 2x plus 1. If I would have done my check, I would have noticed that it wasn't right, because 2x times 1x is 2x squared, which checks out. 1x times 4 is not 4x. And so that helped me see that this was not a 4, and I just wrote the wrong number. So 1x times 1 is 1, 4 times 2x is 8x, 4 times 1 is 4. So if you do that check, notice how that saves you from getting it wrong right here. Looking at example 2, it's the same idea. So it's in standard form. So it goes 2, 1, constant. So it's in standard form. We look to see is there a number that goes into all of them. Your smallest number is 3, and it doesn't divide into 13 evenly. So we know we're done. So we're going to go 3 times negative 10, which is negative 30. We'll go 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 5 times 6. And we're looking for the pair that either adds or subtracts to give us 13. So 2 and 15 adds or subtracts to give us 13, and 10 and 3 would give us 13. So to get 13 with 2 and 15, it has to be a negative. So it checks out by adding and subtracting to get a positive 13. When I do the multiply, does 2 times negative 15 give you negative 30? It does, but 3 times 10 gives you positive 30. So this one didn't work. Okay, and so we know we're going to use the top one. We're going to do the box. First term, which is 3n squared, goes in the first box. Last term of negative 10 goes in the last box. And then the pair that I pick, which was 2n and negative 15n, goes in the other two boxes. And then we take out greatest common factor. So greatest common factor of the first row, 3 is your smaller number. And does it go into 15 evenly? It does, so we write it down. And then they both have an n, so we write it down. Smallest power is 1, so I only take 1 away. As I look at the bottom row, smallest number is 2. Does 2 go into 10 evenly? It does, so we write it down. Do they both have a letter? We don't, so we're done. Going the other way, 3 and 2, 2 is your smaller number. Does it divide into 3 evenly? It does not. And the only other factor of 2 is 1, so I take a 1 out. And then do they both have a letter? They both have an n. And the smallest power is 1, so we take just 1 out. And then negative 15 and negative 10, same idea. I look at negative 10. Does negative 10 divide into negative 15 evenly? It doesn't. So I have to look for another pair or another value. Now, another thing you can do is just go backwards. I know that this is a 2 on this end. So negative 10 divided by 2 makes negative 5 up here. That's another way to check it. So, or to find your value. So 3n times 1n is 3n squared. 3n times negative 5 is negative 15n. 2 times 1n is 2n. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. So that all worked out. So we get n minus 5 and we get 3n plus 2 as our solution. Looking at example 3. First step again. Is it in standard form? So it goes 2, 1, constant, so we're good. The next thing we do is look to see, is there a number that divides into 10, 24, and 14? So as I look at my factors of 10, I have 1 and 10, 2 and 5, and that's it. And so as I look at 10, does 10 go into 24 evenly? It doesn't, so we cross it off. We go to 5. Does 5 go into 24 evenly? It doesn't. So we cross it off. And then we go to 2. Does 2 go into 24 evenly? It does. Does 2 go into 14 evenly? It does. So that makes it so we're going to take 2 out of everything. So the 2 is going to come out, and then we divide. So 10 divided by 2 is 5, x squared, because we didn't take any letters out. 24 divided by 2 is 12, so it's minus 12x. And then 14 divided by 2 is 7. Once I have that, I no longer need this because I've rewritten my polynomial in a different way. So now that we're there, we're going to go 5 times 7, which is 35. And our factors of 35 are 1 and 35 and 5 and 7. And we're looking for a pair that gives us negative 12 in the middle. So that would be 5 and 7. And they both would be negative in order to get negative 12. We also want to just double check, is a negative times a negative a positive up here? And it's good. So we're going to do our box. I'm just going to do it over here. So first term is 5x squared. Last term is 7. And the pair that we picked was negative 5x and negative 7x. So as we take out our greatest common factor is, the smallest number is 5, and it goes into negative 5 evenly, so we write it down. And then they both have an x, so we write it down. The smallest power of x is 1, so I just take 1 out. I look at negative 7 and 7. Our smallest number is 7. Does it divide into 7 evenly? It does, so we write it down. And if you don't notice that there's a negative sign here, we can catch that in a minute. They both don't have an x. So we only take the 7 out. And then 5 and 7, 5 is your smaller number. 5 doesn't go into 7 evenly, so we have to take out a 1. So that's the only other factor of 5. They both have an x, so we write it down. There's a power of 1 as your smallest, so we only take 1 out. And then going the other way, same idea. 5 and 7, the only thing they have in common is a 1. And they don't have a letter in common, so we can only take out a 1. When we do our double check, that's when we see that we missed signs. So 5x times 1x is 5x squared. 5x times 1 is positive 5x, and I needed a negative here. So that helps me see that I should have had a negative up top. 7 times 1x is positive 7x, but we needed a negative again. So that's how I see that I needed a negative here. And then negative 7 times negative 1 is a positive 7. So if you don't catch it right at the beginning, you catch it when you do that check, and then you still are good. Remember, when you write down your answer, the greatest common factor is part of your solution, and then it's what you get on top and what you get on this side. So your answer would be 2, and then 2x minus 1 and 5x minus 7. So this is my solution. And then as we look at number 6, same idea. We are just looking to see, can I take something? Well, first off, is it in standard form? It goes 2, 1, constant, so we're good. And then we look to see, do you have anything you can take out? So if you look at it right away, maybe you don't see anything, but our factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. And so you might see that 6 doesn't go into 39, and so we can cross it off. When I look at 3, 3 does go into 39, and when I look at 3 and 45, if you're not sure, you can check it, but it does go in. And so we're going to take a 3 out. So when I take the 3 out, I'm left with 2y squared minus 13y, and then plus 15. And all I did was divide everything by 3. So once I'm there, then I'm going to multiply 2 times 15, which is 30. Factors of 30 are 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. And what I'm trying to do is get negative 13 in the middle. So as I do that, I notice that I've got 2 that give me 13. I get 2 subtract 15 that gives you negative 13. And I have negative 3 and negative 10, which would give me negative 13. So both of these add or subtract to give me negative 13. But what I'm looking for is it to be a positive 30. So 2 times negative 15 is a negative number, so that one doesn't work. A negative times a negative is a positive, so this one does work. And so then we're just going to do our box. I'm just going to do it over to this side. And our first term is 2y squared. Remember that as soon as I take that greatest common factor out, I don't need that first equation anymore. Last box is 15, and the pair that I picked was negative 3y and negative 10y. And then as you take out greatest common factor out of this row, choose your smaller number. Doesn't go into 3 evenly, so the only other factor of 2 is 1, and they both have a y. And then negative 10 and 15, the factors of 10, 10 doesn't go into 15. The next smallest factor of 10 is 5. The 5 does go into 15, so I can write it down. Now, if we're not seeing that, we can just hold off in this position for a minute and go the other way, because maybe it's easier to see, okay, this is a 2. Does 2 go into 10 evenly? It does, so we write it down. And then they both have a y in common, and the smallest power is 1, so we take 1. And then you can go backwards, because you can say, well, negative 10 divided by 2 is what? And so that's negative 5y. So if you can get that, if you're not sure, you can always go backwards and just do like a different row or column. And then negative 3 and 15, same idea. My smaller number is negative 3. Does it go into 15 evenly? It does. And so we write it down. And then when we do our double check, 1y times 2y is 2y squared. 1y times negative 3 is negative 3y. Negative 5y times 2, negative 10y. Negative 5y times negative 3 is positive 15y. This doesn't have a y, so that helps you see that I shouldn't have had a y here. And so it helps you see your mistakes really easy. And so then my answer, the 3 comes down as part of my solution, and then I've got 2y minus 3, and I have y minus 5. All right, hopefully that helps. It's the same thing that we were doing in 2.5, except for now a is not 1. So let me know if you have any questions.